Everyone, in this video we are going to build an exciting project. It's an online resources chatbot. So this allows you to paste a single or multiple URL links and be able to chat with them. Okay, so I'm going to show you how this works. We are going to do that using the Embedchain, free LLM, and open source, and an embeddings as well. Okay, so we going to go through slide demo. So you can actually select a multiple. We can just select two links here. Okay. All right. So you can paste in your link here. In this case, for demonstration purposes, I'm going to do just one. And I'm going to use this link right here. Okay. I'm going to paste it here. And I'm going to hit enter. All right. So let's ask a question. Let's chat. Let's chat with the URL. It's an embedding document right here. Okay. So I'm going to say is database and send. All right. So I asked a question, what is vector database? And it's saying that database is a type of database that stores data in a hierarchical structure where each record contains a set of values that represent the attribute of an object. Yeah, it's quite accurate here. All right, so let me ask another question. I'm going to say, what is, is the type of embedding, Embedchain? Let's see how it comes. All right, yeah, so it's giving us some answers here. Let's see what it's saying. All right, it's list the type of embed chain. It's saying embedded app, web app, native app. All right, it's basically, I'm asking questions about the documents here. Okay, all right, so we are going to go through how this is built step by step. Okay, it's pretty an exciting project. All right, so let's see. Okay, so I already have a video on Embedchain. I'm going to type the link so you can look at it. Just to give a view of Embedchain. It's a framework that helps you to create LLM powered bots over any data set. Okay. All right. So they have some types here. So the types of the Embedchain, we have that one that uses the OpenAI keys, the Llama 2. They are all paid versions. Okay, you need an access to API token. But in today's video, we are actually going to use the open source. We're going to build the open source app. So we are going to use the open source embeddings and the LLMs. So we are going to use the all minim from the sentence transformers library as the embeddings. So as you can see right here, from Hugging Face, we're going to use the sentence transformers as the embeddings, right? So embeddings are nothing but the representation of the text in numbers, okay? And we are going to use the GPT-4 all as the LLMs, all right? They are open source, so we do not need to set up an API key. So we only need to install the Embedchain package and everything comes out automatically. So, right. So it's pretty simple and straightforward. All right. All right. So let's get into this. Before we do that, let's get into the code. We are going to actually build this application step by step. All right. Okay. So in my VS Code, I have started startup code over here already. All right, so created the environment. Okay, so let me just click in here and start a new terminal. Okay, so I'm gonna attach the link to the GitHub so you can grab the code and just play with it. Okay, all right. So set up environment. If you don't know how to do that in your Python or in your VS Code, in your terminal or your coding platforms, you just go and say Python -m-v-e-m-v and say env, then you hit enter, and you're going to see the environment created right here. Okay, and we need these packages to be installed. So we're going to do Embedchain, we're going to install the STREAMLIT, and we are going to install the STREAMLIT chat. So we're going to create a chat box. Okay, right. So if you want to install the requirement, you say pip install -r requirements txt, and you hit enter. Right, have that installed already. Okay, so the next thing is let's start creating the application. So we start, we import streamlit.st, streamlit to create the data frame, the framework, and the streamlit chat to create the chat boxes, the message. So we're going to be adding some memories to it so we can record the history. Okay, from an embed chain, we import the open source. So this contains the, so under the hood is having some long chain capabilities. Okay, we have the LLMs, the open source, and the transformers, sentence transformers, all in the open source app. So everything is pre-installed in there, so we don't have to worry much about that. Okay. All right. So the next thing is to create a Streamlit app title. And so, all right, so let's start from here. I'm going to say save all. And now we say create Streamlit app title and description as the online resources chat up. And we put a symbol, sign, of books. All right, and we say st.write. We say enter multiple URL links and ask questions about embedded snap. All right, so now let's run this and see Streamlit run app.py and hit enter. All right, and there we have it. We started initial. So let's move on. So the next thing we want to do now is we want to initialize the open source instance. So here we say we want to say initialize the open source app instance. Right. So we're going to call it any name that we want. Call it. So we say C open source app. So we initialized it. Okay. So this is what I mean. Walk you through this real quick. Okay. So first of all, we have installed the Embedchain. So we import the open source app. So the open source app contains all these LLMs and everything in there. So we don't have to really worry about that. Okay. So now let's go back to the code, and we are going to say when we initialize that, we are going to get user input for URLs. Okay. So we want to get the input for the URLs, and we're going to say URL links is equal to st.number. We're going to input the numbers. the URL link. So you can say enter the number of URLs. I'm going to do a comma. I'm going to say the minimum. Put the minimum value is equal to 1. Value is equal to 1. So we want the minimum value to be equal to 1, right? And we add a step of 1, okay? And we're going to say URLs input. So we start with an empty list. So we are going to create an empty list. Now we are going to iterate through the range of the number of links. Okay, so we're going to iterate through the number of links. Say for for I in the range of the number of links. Okay, we are going to say that create an input, right? I'm going to write something and say enter URL at this. So we are now going to count. Okay, the key is equal to the URL. Right, we're going to pass in the number. Okay, so that when you trade through the inputs through the links, we're going to create an input text that will say enter the URL. So it's probably going to be counting the number of URLs that you enter. Okay, it's going to create a text input box in there. Okay, so the URL, say we're going to call it URL input. We're going to append the URL. Okay. Okay. So the next thing is we're going to add URLs to the instance. Source app instance. Okay. So for URL in the URL input. Right. So for each of the URL in the URL input, so if we are going to write the condition and say if there is the URL, right, we're going to pass add the URL to the open source app instance. So we are going to say let's add okay, web page URL. Right. So so this nothing but just adding the URL to the open source app instance. Okay. So we are just adding any of the URL links to the instance, right? So it can probably give us the answers that we need here. So the conversation chat function. So now we are creating a conversation chat. I'm going to say conversation chat query. So we're going to pass in a query. So at this point, we would just want to create a conversation chat so that it's going to be the user and the answers that are coming out from the models. Okay. So it's going to be the user and the bot now. All right. So we say conversation chat, and we say resolves is equal to the Zach. We are passing in the OpenAI again, the open source app instance again. All right. It's not OpenAI app, it's OpenAI instance. So we say query. So we pass in the query, the section state. Section state is going to be the history. We're going to append the query and the results. Right. So now we are interested in the results. Okay. So we say return results. Okay. So we create a conversation chat and we pass in the create a variable called the results, where we pass in the query into the OpenAI open source app instance. Sorry, OpenAI open source app instance. So that's going to give you the results, and we want to keep the history, right? So we append the results and the query into the history. So we want to return the results from the conversation. Okay, so now we are saying def initialize section. So we are initialize section state. So we want to initialize the state of the conversation. Right. So in the conversation we have the history, have the generated, we have the past. So if history not in st.section state, it's going to return the section state, the history, and the section state of the history. Okay, we want to keep it an empty list. And if the generated, so that is the answer from the bot, not in st section state. Okay, the result is not there. Now we are saying that generated is equal to something like hello ask anything about, right? And the next thing is if it's passed in section state, as in section state, passed, it's equal to, let's say, hey, right? Okay, so now we want to create a function to display the chat history. Display chat history. Okay, display the chat history. So we create a container We're going to have the reply container. Okay. We're going to have the initiate that. I have an error here. Okay. And we create a container for the second container. Okay, container. Right. Right. So we have two containers. Now we're going to say with container. So this is nothing but just container to hold the conversation. All right. So we're saying with so inside the container, we are creating a form. Key is equal to the form. Right. So when we submit the form, right, we want it to clear on submit, clear the inputs when we submit. So we say user inputs. So now we're creating a text box. Hey guys, so I'm doing a lot of coding, so I'll take you through that when I'm done with everything. Creating a question. Right, so we're creating a question in the text box. Right. Say as a placeholder. So let's put something in a placeholder and say ask me about resources. Okay. We want to say key is equal to input. Right. So we're only focusing on the input. Right. And now submit. Create a button, calling the submit button. Okay. I'm going to say st form. Right. So form submit button. I'm going to say, so when we click on that, it's going to submit the form. Right. And label. So we're going to put something like a label. And we are going to name it send. So that when you click on the send, it's going to submit the form. Right. And it's going to clear the inputs whenever you click on submit. Okay. And now I'm going to write a condition. I'm going to say so if submit. So if we have the submit button and the user input. So once we have the submit button and the user input, what we want to do now? We want the output. We want to create a variable called the output. Right. We're going to pass the conversation chat. In the conversation chat, we put the user input. Okay, so the conversation chat right here. Conversation chat right here. We're going to pass this function right here that holds the query. Right, we're going to pass it in here between the submit button, the user, and that's going to hold the variable called the output. Okay, we're now going to say st dot state session state of the now past. And now user input. Right? So once we have the submit button in the user input, we also want to get the past conversation from the user input, and we want to get the generated as well. Okay? Very simple. Okay? So we just want this chat to be very placed in a conversational way. Okay, so we want to have the output from the user's conversation. All right, so whenever it's generated, we want to get the output, and the user input, we want to get the past conversation. All right, and now we are saying that, okay, let's write a statement. So if so we're going to say if submit okay, so if generated, okay, if the sixth session state has the generated message, generated. Okay, so what we want to do now, we'll place that in a container as the reply container. Okay, and we want to iterate through. So for I in range to the length range, we go to the length of the state section state of the generated. All right, generated. Generated. What we want to do now, we want to get a message. Right, we want to create a message between the user and the bot. Right, so session state, we need a past as in the number is the user. So this is from the user. We're going to say that to true. True. This user, and I'm going to say key is going to be a string. We're going to turn that into a string as the user. All right, so here I'm going to say, we put a style in there, call it avatar style. It's nothing but just a design, something like, let's see, thumbs. Okay. I think this is thumbs. Okay. Right. And let's create another message box. Okay. Okay, so I think I can just copy this one and edit, paste it here. So this time we need the generated answer. generated, and we don't need a user because it's from the generated from the bot. Avatar, we don't need this style and terms. This time I want to do it emoji. So let's say fan emoji. Right, so you can put whatever you want there. Okay. And now what I want to do now is let's initialize function. Oh, let's initialize the state sections. Okay. So initialize the section state. All right. And let's display the chat history. The chat history. Okay. All right. I think all is set. We'll quickly walk you through this. All right. So we import the libraries, Streamlit for the framework, Streamlit chat to create a conversation chat, embedding chain to create the chain, the LLMs to grab, um, create and the answers, right? So the open source app just contains everything that we need, the LLM, the open source, and the another hood working with LangChain, and also the free embeddings, some sentence transformers. Right, so we create a st.titles for the title, put in something like a book, right? And we write something like enter multiple links. You can put in any message you want. Now we initialize the open source app. We call it open source app. So we can put it in a name in a variable. I call it chatbot. So get user input, we get a user input. So the number of links that you want to put in there, you say st.number input. Right, you enter the number of links. Minimum value should be one. The value is one step is equal to one. So whenever you clicking the plus sign, it's going to increase the number of steps. Okay, so now we create an input URL input, and we call it the empty list. We iterate through the number of links. So we create a variable that's going to contain the numbers that we are getting. So we have the number of links is going to count the number of links that we are getting through the iteration of the number of links. We want to create a text input box. So that will enable you to post in more links. Okay. So we're going to append that to the URL input links. Okay. So now we want to add URL links to the open source app instance. So we say for URL in the open URL input right here. So if there is an URL, we are going to pass the open source app instance. We are going to pass the links, all of the links to the open source app instance. That's where it's going to perform the magic. Okay. So now the conversation chat app, we create a history. Okay, we say that create a query conversation, we call it conversation chat, and the resource is going to be the query that we pass through the open source app, right? And we're going to pass that to the resource, and we are going to need the history. We're going to append the query and the resource to the history, and then we just want to return the results. Now we initialize the state. So we have three state: history, generated, in the past. So if there's no history in the section, we make it an empty list. So if there's generated not in this section, we could say, hello, ask me anything about, you can put it in anything that you want to put in there. So in the past, so not in this section state, we are going to say, hey, now we create, display the chat history. we create a container, the reply container, and the other container. Okay. So with the container, you can name it whatever name. So we only need the reply container. So with container, we are going to pass in the form. So when the form is submitted, we clear the question. So clear is equal to true. So we say the user input. The user input is going to put text, create a text input called report question and placeholder, something like ask me and resources. Right. And we're going to make sure the key is equal to true. And now we create a submit button for the form. And we say that we submit the button and we create a label. I think this is wrong. Label is equal to send. All right. So if submit button and the user input, the output conversation. All right. I should change this one here. Conversation chat. Okay. Conversation chat. So for if there's submit and the user input, we're going to say we're going to pass the user input to the conversation chat and we are going to hold that to the output. And we're now going to append the user input into the past and the output from here, the user input, we're going to do the output to the generated. Okay, so now for the generated, we want to create a reply container. So we want to iterate through the generated, and we want to create a message for the past and the generated. All right, and we want to put styles there, like avatar or something. Okay. All right. It looks fine. It looks fine. And we initialize the section state and the display chat history. All right, so let's run it and see. Okay, I think I had this one here. Let's rerun it. All right, so it looks like we have an error here. Okay, let me see. I think step. Should be step. Okay. All right, let's see. Run it again. All right, let's rerun it. All right, perfect. Okay, so you can put in any link that you want to put in here. Okay, so I'm going to say 1, or if you want 2, you can say 2. And let me put in this link again. Let's see. All right. Okay, let me go. So let's see. Let me hit enter. Let me ask a question. I'm going to say, what is vector base again? Database. All right, perfect. There you have it. This is so awesome. All right, so under the hood, I just want to make sure. So whenever you run it, it automatically creates a database here using Chroma, SQLite 3. So it stores everything here, and it creates embeddings from everything within the stores them into your database here right here. All right. Yeah. So that's it. I hope you like this video, and please don't forget to subscribe and share. See you in the next one.